I'm 27 years old, and my wife Emily, who's 26, along with my father, let's call him B, 52, and my mother R, 50, are at the heart of this unexpected turn in my life. I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, but here I am. This is my first time using Reddit. I've seen stories from here on TikTok, so I thought I'd seek advice here. From what I've gathered, backstory matters, so I'll try to be clear and precise, though it's only been a week and recounting this might get emotional. Emily and I first met during her freshman year of college. We were both in the same dorm building, and it turned out we lived just 2 towns apart. Whenever she headed home, I'd offer her a ride, adding just 20 minutes to my journey, no big deal. After several trips and hanging out on campus, we started dating. Both our families are close-knit, so we introduced each other right away. I'd met her family a few times when dropping her off, but it was all pleasantries and introductions. Both families welcomed each other with open arms, and our relationship blossomed. I graduated a year ahead of her and landed a good job back home with great pay. I'd visit her at school whenever possible, and when she graduated, she moved in with me since our jobs were near our hometown. Like me, she was offered a position at her current company with good pay. After living together for about 3 years, I proposed, and we've been planning our wedding since. Now, onto the part you're all here for. Looking back, there were signs I overlooked, chalking them up to my father just trying to bond with my Emily. Like his frequent calls to her, often while I was around, and they'd brush it off as discussing family events or something similar. Once, when Emily was in the shower and her phone rang, seeing it was my dad, I answered. He sounded both upset and surprised that I picked up. I asked what was up, and he mentioned wanting to talk to Emily about my mother's upcoming birthday in a week. Even now, typing this out, I feel foolish for not seeing the truth sooner. The day I found out felt like any other. Emily had Thursdays off and made breakfast for us. She kissed me goodbye as I left for work. During my drive, I realized I'd forgotten some paperwork for a 3 p.m. meeting. I shrugged it off, planning to grab it at lunch. Emily texted me throughout the day about mundane things, dinner plans, laundry, normal couple stuff. I didn't think to tell her I was coming home for lunch, so I left work and headed home. Arriving at our building, I noticed a car that looked like my father's in the parking lot, but didn't think much of it. I entered our apartment and was met with a scene straight out of a cliché movie, a man coming home early to catch his spouse cheating. There was a trail of clothes leading to my bedroom, faint moans echoing through the apartment. I stood there in shock, a mix of rage, sadness, and disgust swirling in my mind. If you were a fly on the wall, you'd have seen me standing like a statue, unable to move. When I finally snapped out of it, I took out my phone and started recording. I gathered up the scattered clothes and tossed them into the building's hallway. Then I filmed my walk to the bedroom. The door was ajar, and I stood in the doorway filming for a minute before switching on the light. They both jumped at the sudden light, and to my disbelief, it was my father in bed with her. He noticed I was recording and panicked, scrambling to cover himself and pleading for me to stop. Grabbing a towel, he wrapped it around himself and approached me. I warned him to back off if he didn't want trouble, but he either didn't hear or didn't care. He reached for my phone, and I swung, hitting him square on the jaw. His head bounced off the door and he slumped to the ground. Emily screamed. I aimed the camera at her and asked, "Concerned about your stupid buddy, but nothing to say to your Emily?" My father regained consciousness after a brief nap, and I told them I was just here to pick up something for work and heading back soon. I threatened to send the video to everyone they knew if they were still there when I returned. Ending the video, I looked at my father, still groggy, and said, "You're dead to me. You're no longer my father. Better talk to Mom because I'll be talking to her very soon." I sat in my car for a while until one of my bosses called, asking where I was. I assured her I was on my way back. When I got to her office to hand over the paperwork, she noticed something was off. Seeing blood on my collar, she rushed over, concerned. I explained it was my father's blood and showed her the video. She watched it all, realizing Emily had been introduced to her a few times, but never my father. She sat in silence, finally grasping the betrayal. She offered support, suggesting I take time off, but I declined. I put on a smile for the meeting, pretending nothing was wrong. Afterward, my boss asked how I managed it, but I had no answer. I returned home, alone for the first time in ages. Thank you for reading this. I'm sorry for rambling, but it's been therapeutic to get it all out. I'm not sure what to do next. I definitely need to leave this apartment. I can't stay here, and that bed is out of the question. I know I need to get tested for STDs and my hand might be broken. I didn't plan to update at all. I just needed to get everything off my chest and hopefully receive some advice. After writing down all that happened, I closed my laptop and fell into a deep depression. To those who think this is made up, I wish I had that kind of creativity. I'd write books instead of working a 9-5 job. I'll try to respond more to comments. I just logged back on, and it's honestly overwhelming to reply to each one. Know that I've read through most of them, and I truly appreciate everyone's input, both positive and negative. The day after posting, I tried reaching my mother, but none of my calls went through. I wanted to meet her for lunch and tell her everything. After a dozen failed attempts, I got into my car and drove to her house. She needed to know what happened as soon as possible, even though reliving it would be painful. During the drive, I panicked, thinking about how to break the news to her. I had to pull over twice to vomit. It's not every day you tell your mom that her husband is sleeping with your fiancé. I parked in her driveway and sat in my car to gather my thoughts. After a few minutes, my mother swung open the front door, and I stepped out. She started yelling, accusing me of hitting my father for trying to break up a fight between Emily and me. She called me every name in the book, labeling me an abuser, and demanded I leave because Emily wasn't ready to forgive me, if she ever would. Apparently, my father had taken Emily to our family home and spun a story that Emily and I had argued, and he intervened, resulting in me hitting him. She ranted on until I couldn't take it anymore and blurted out, "Really, Mom? Because your husband is sleeping with my fiancé. That's why I hit him. And if you can't believe me, I have a video. I'll send it to you. But don't expect to see me again. I don't want your apology when you realize you're just as awful a mother as my piece of shit father." Her expression dropped. She looked as shocked as I had when I first walked into my apartment and caught them. I pulled out my phone and sent her the video. She took out her phone, turned it on, and watched until I switched on the light. Then she put her phone down and looked up at me, but I turned and headed back to my car. I backed out of her driveway, glanced at her through my rearview mirror. She was in tears. My heart ached for her, but too much had been said during that argument for me to turn back and forgive her. Back home, I started clearing out everything in my apartment that reminded me of Emily or my family. I packed all of Emily's belongings into boxes and set them by the front door. Legally, this has been her residence, so I can't technically kick her out. Her name isn't on the lease and she avoids conflict, but if she returns for anything other than her belongings, there will be trouble. I boxed up anything related to my parents and put it in storage. As I mentioned earlier, we were a close family, but I've never hesitated to cut out toxic people. I texted Emily's parents, called off the engagement, and informed them she's been unfaithful. I thanked them for their kindness and support. Our relationship was still developing, so this betrayal hurt even more. I concluded by asking if they could pick up her things. I haven't received a response yet, but I hope they'll come so Emily won't have a reason to return here. Everything hits me in waves. I alternate between numbness and boiling rage. I haven't experienced a single happy moment since the betrayal. Other than a few friends, I don't have anyone in real life, especially since my family turned out to be awful. A lot has happened since my last update, about a month ago, so I'll fill you in on everything that's been going on. After my last post, I took action on everything that needed to be done, getting tested, finding a therapist, moving out, and buying a new bed. I called my doctor's office and scheduled a test while also getting a referral to a therapist. I had my first therapy session 2 weeks ago, and we decided to continue weekly. I got tested last week, and I'm anxiously waiting for the results. Fingers crossed. I contacted a friend who's a real estate agent, and he sent me numerous listings. I settled on a refurbished cabin on the outskirts of town, and I finished moving in 2 days ago. Once I finished moving, I called Emily's parents. They picked up, and I informed them that I've moved out, but Emily still hasn't retrieved her things. I mentioned that the landlord would start showing the apartment soon, so they needed to collect her belongings before they were disposed of. That seemed to light a fire under them because the next day, my former landlord texted me, thanking me for emptying out the apartment. No one knows my new address except for the friend who helped me find this place, so I'm confident neither Emily nor my parents will drop by. The only downside is that I traded a 10-minute walk to work for a 45-minute drive. My phone has been bombarded with texts and calls from Emily, my parents, and a few friends, but I have no desire to speak to anyone other than my therapist. At work, I've become a ghost. I show up, get my work done, and leave. If I have to interact with someone, I put on a fake smile and pretend everything is fine. My boss from my previous post has been checking in on me more often, but I don't share much. I just thank her and assure her I'll be okay. Honestly, I don't know if I will be. I understand that time heals, but it feels like that's only relevant when you're dealing with one problem, not when you lose the 3 people closest to you all at once. A significant part of me has died, and there's no way to revive it. Therapy sessions are progressing, I think. I've never done therapy before, so I have no benchmark for what constitutes good therapy. My therapist and I get along decently, and she seems genuinely interested in helping me. Our first session was introductory, where I outlined what happened in my own words. In the second session, we delved deeper. She asked about my relationship with my parents. I explained that up until recently it was great. We communicated well and had a close bond. But now none of that matters. She inquired about why I cut my mother out of my life, and I explained the hurtful things she said and how I couldn't see a way to forgive her. At the end of our last session, I shared the link to my post here with her so she could understand more about what I'm going through. It's easier for me to type things out than to say them aloud. So, if you're reading this, hi Doc. For now, I'm still miserable. I thought I'd be feeling better by now, not necessarily happy, but at least okay. Some of it is my fault. I haven't communicated with my friends. But the thought of responding to them feels exhausting. I know they want to meet up or visit my new place, but I just don't have the energy to be around them right now. Until I do, I'll focus on work, attend my therapy sessions, and sit on my back deck, sipping on cheap whiskey and trying to appreciate the beautiful view. I haven't hunted since high school, so maybe I'll take that up again now that I can do it from my own back porch. After my last post, I was far from okay, so I retreated from everything to focus on healing and coping with my new reality. I want you all to know that every comment and message didn't go unheard. I took in all the positive feedback and advice and worked through my issues. To those who supported me through this, thank you from the bottom of my heart. When I was at my lowest, it was internet strangers who were there for me, and I can't express how grateful I am. In my last update, I was busy getting tested for STDs and trying to restart my life. I'm relieved to inform you all that I am clean and feeling a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. I've completely settled into my new place. When I described it as a refurbished cabin, I may have exaggerated a bit. It was actually refurbished about 25-30 years ago, so it was a bit dated. With all the spare time on my hands, I decided to refurbish it further. The only tasks I didn't tackle myself were the electrical and plumbing work. I have zero interest in getting electrocuted or dealing with sewage pipes. Doing all this work has been incredibly therapeutic and has helped clear my mind. I still see my therapist once a week, and to those who suggested therapy, you probably saved my life. Being able to vent, express my frustrations, and receive advice has been invaluable. I'm still working at the same company, and I've started opening up more to some coworkers and my previous boss, thanks to the advice from my therapist. Also, following her guidance and the advice from many of you, I've begun reconnecting with my friends and slowly reintegrating into the group. Now, on to the update regarding my family and ex. I felt ready to have a conversation with my mother, so over a month ago I unblocked her number and reached out. She picked up almost instantly, sounding panicked. After reassuring her it was me, I suggested we meet and talk, and she agreed. We met at a diner near her house the next day. When I arrived, she was already there, quietly sobbing when she saw me. We sat down, and she apologized repeatedly, acknowledging she only believed my father and Emily because she never imagined they would betray me like this. I thanked her for the apology, but made it clear that her hurtful words during that confrontation showed me her true feelings toward me. She cried harder, insisting she was blinded by anger when she heard about me hitting my father for no reason and when I confronted them. Not wanting to dwell on it, I changed the subject to my father. She informed me that they've been separated, she kicked him out, since the day after I showed her the video, and she immediately sought legal counsel. We then discussed Emily. My mother recounted how, when I pulled away, Emily returned to the house and my mother threw them both out, unable to bear looking at them. We talked for about an hour in total, and before I left, I told her that during my darkest time, her words pushed me away when I needed her most, and I wasn't sure if I could have her in my life again. I did express a willingness to work on our relationship, but it would have to be on my terms. As I was about to leave, she stopped me, saying there was something important she needed to tell me. I sat back down and she dropped a bombshell. Emily is pregnant. Apparently, Emily showed up at the house and disclosed this news to my mother. She doesn't know if the child is mine or my father's and asked if I had been in touch so she could inform me. Obviously, she hasn't contacted me, so my mother sent her away. And that's the update. I have a lot on my mind, unsure of what to think or feel. Thank you for listening, and I apologize for rambling.